Everyone talks about summer like it's supposed to be carefree. But if this season brings up money stress, body stress, family stress, or social stress, that's real too. Growth therapy can help with that. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits you, not the other way around. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person visits, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Grow accepts over 100 insurance plans, including Medicaid in some states. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage by state and insurance plan.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Good morning, police, fire, military, and families, and to everybody who is listening in on the Tactical Living podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, and I am really excited today because we're going to be talking about life and death and money and children, and we have a really special attorney with us today, Stephanie Prestridge. I wanted to call you Prestige all morning.
Yeah, everybody does, yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to visit with y'all about this topic.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, you guys. We're going to get really raw and vulnerable, and we have about 20 to 30 minutes together today. So if you guys have any questions, please take advantage of it while we have Stephanie here. She's also inside of the group, so if there's something that you guys have a question about, or if you want to contact her directly, we'll make sure that there's no confusion on how to actually be able to do that. We're giving away a 45-piece snack box to whoever comments the most within the next 24 hours. So go ahead, drop your questions. And, you know, Stephanie, you have a very special niche when it comes to your practice and you being an attorney and the way that you got into it. So if you don't mind just sharing with everybody a little bit about how that all transpired.
Absolutely. I've been an estate planning attorney for almost 20 years. And I fell into that practice by accident. I actually was doing like international trade law, and my grandparents got sick, and just by way of their circumstances, I fell into handling estate planning matters because I couldn't help them. So I learned by going through it with them. And then as my practice grew, I started noticing clients that were coming in, one in particular that we knew her spouse was going to pass. We knew what their assets were, what their debts were, and we made a plan to protect that family when he passed away. And the backbone of that plan was a life insurance, actually 2 life insurance policies that we knew we were going to need to pay off debts, close a business, take care of kids, all of the things that's my job to do, to make sure all of it, coincides. And after he passed, she calls me, and my first question is, okay, did you make a claim for the life insurance? Is it there? Have you deposited it? What's the process? What's going on? And she says, well, funny enough, they sent me a letter and they returned our premiums. They said they weren't going to pay it. And I was flabbergasted and appalled. Like, this doesn't happen. That's not how life insurance works. It's they pay the claim. You have the policy, somebody dies, they pay the claim. And we ended up, looking into that matter and fighting to get those proceeds for her. And it was devastating, but we won. And we explained to them, this is why you've got to pay and what you've got to go through. And my husband, who's also my law partner, he's feisty, and he was looking at this going, this is unacceptable, because if it's happened to one of our clients, and this was not, one of our biggest clients, or, this was a client that we were just looking at it going, this is just a regular plan. This is an everyday, typical plan. And he was like, if this happened to our client, it's happening more than we realize. And from that moment, we started paying attention to cases online and to what was going on in our clients' lives. And we got so busy handling just these cases that I had to pull back on my estate planning. Like I very rarely do an estate plan anymore because all we do are handle these cases across the country now.
And anybody who's listening, you're able to help them no matter where they live in the U.S.
Absolutely. So this is a federal practice. We take cases all across the country. I'm still waiting for a trial in Hawaii. Hasn't happened yet, but we take them all across the country.
Okay, so from my work with clients and just in life in general with our family and friends, a lot of the times we'll hear somebody talking about topics like this and we don't think that they apply to us until that thing happens. So why is it that anybody who is tuning in today, they should be paying attention to this?
So that's a great question. And I'm going to kind of break it down into two parts. One, and really recognizing the members of this group, because as first responders, like we all to some degree see situational chaos, which is probably the bulk, right? When we walk in and we see the situation where there's this tremendous amount of chaos and we're trying to get all of the facts and be calm and handle everything so that we can address this chaos to find some resolution. And then there's also administrative chaos, right? Where it's, we don't have all of the information that we need or the paperwork's not done right. And first responders to some degree usually focus more on one circumstance than the other, but there's always an interaction. My entire business is built off of the collision of those two things, where we have situational chaos combined with administrative chaos, meaning that everything we look at is somebody's just passed, right? And so we are dealing with the chaos and the grief that comes with that, where we're trying to handle our grief, to deal with family members, to understand what we need to do next. And most people don't know what to do next, or they're assuming that somebody else has handled certain things and they know what to do, or they've got a plan for where to go. And then we're looking at the administrative chaos and do we know where everything is? Do we understand, was everything done properly? Do we know who to call? And oh my gosh, what if we don't know? Where do we go from there? What's the process? My entire business is on that collision between them because we're dealing with grief, family dynamics, and paperwork, and companies that are legally, though in a tricky way, trying to find a way to not pay those claims, even though you paid for a policy for all of these years. And no one thinks it can happen. Everyone is shocked when there is a dispute to a life insurance policy or a claim is denied on the basis that, we know you paid your premiums, we know you thought you had it, but we're going to go back and look at these medical records, or gosh, we called and asked a question and just because of how a question was answered, we're not sure whether or not we're going to pay this claim, or you didn't understand the definitions, or you didn't send the response in the right time. Well, nobody knows what to do. And it's horrific and devastating. It's another death with the person, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah, that is so stressful. Good morning. Good morning. That is completely unacceptable. How can companies deny a claim that someone has paid into? I can't stand insurance companies. Yeah, totally. And, I want to talk to those who maybe don't have anything set up yet, Stephanie, those who have no trust, no will, like maybe they don't even have the desire for that. Can you just maybe speak to those who don't?
So I really appreciate that. One, it seems overwhelming, and I get it. I'm a nice lawyer, but I nobody wants to go hire a lawyer. I get it, right? I mean, like why? And so when you do hire a lawyer to look at things like estate planning, you're basically paying someone you really don't want to go see in the first place to talk to you about your kids, your money, your concerns, your hopes, your fights, all of these things, because they're really going into your sock drawer to help design a plan. By the way, if you go see a lawyer and they do not go through your sock drawer to do this plan, they are not your lawyer, because they need all of that information to do a good job. So I get it, right? And plus there's that unconscious thought that if we go see somebody to talk about death, we're going to die. And I always have to tell people that no one has died just because they came to see me, right? And, it's just, I'm not that trigger, but it's uncomfortable. And you keep thinking, well, I have time, or I need to see what happens in this circumstance and kind of work our way through it. And then sometimes spouses aren't on the same page about it. So I really appreciate the discomfort in that. And my response to that is, you are not legally required to do anything. You're not. You're not. But if you don't write a plan, if you don't take some steps moving forward with that, I want you to know that the government wrote one for you. And if you think that's the plan that you want, you should think again, because it never works out the way you expected it to. Also, I want people to understand that a conversation is not an estate plan. I cannot tell you how many people come to me and say, well, I talked to my son, or I talked to my daughter, or my grandkids understand what I want. What they know what you want and what's actually going to happen are not the same thing, because that's not how it works. And it's the same way with life insurance. When you say, I named my first child as the sole beneficiary of my life insurance, but they're going to do the right thing and divide it between their siblings. They might do the right thing, but they're absolutely under no obligation whatsoever to do that. And so it's all of these uncomfortable things that are actually really easy to address with a good conversation and a good person who can help you write it out and make sure that the paperwork's done properly. But do something, because if you don't, the government will do it for you. And if that's not scary enough, the part that bothers me most is we have such incredible people in our lives. And when they leave a mess, it doesn't matter how good our memories are or what experiences we had. What we all remember is the confusion and the heartache and the process that we had to go through when they died. That is your legacy. If you don't take the time to take a breath and start handling your own business and making sure that it's done properly.
I'm really glad that you said that, because when my mom died, I just remember thinking how unfortunate it is that we, even in our adolescence, we were never given any proper training, no education. There's no schooling that tells you the realities of life and death when it comes to how to actually handle these situations. And so I like knowing that there's people out there that actually have a heart. And yes, Clint, wait, what? I didn't know that there were nice lawyers. There absolutely are. To where
it's an oxymoron. I get
you make it more about having that conversation. And let's say that the pushback that you're getting is something along the lines of, well, I don't have a home, I don't have assets. Why do I need to do this?
Well, and that's a great conversation, because you're right. You may not need to do it. I have told more than one person, thank you for coming to see me. You don't need me. That's the truth. Sometimes most of what people have may be a car and like their retirement account, or maybe it's a checking account and a car and nothing else. We look at those things and say, okay, here's what's going to happen when you pass, if this is all you have, right? I don't get anything by making somebody do something they don't need to do, right? That'll bite me on the ankles down the road. So here we just look at, what do you have? And let me tell you what the law says about what happens with it. So when we look with estate planning, that's state specific. So I can look at you and say, look, in my state where, if you have this amount of money in a bank account and you have a car, I can tell you what's going to happen, and you absolutely do not need me. You don't need me to write a will. You don't need me to do any of these other things. But you should know, right? At least have some place where you can ask good questions, or if you don't know which questions to ask, bring what information you have so that somebody can look at it and say, let me tell you the questions I think you should be asking. And I think a lot of people confuse lawyers with, you go to them and you tell them, this is what I want to see happen. A good lawyer is going to look at you and say, tell me what you got. Tell me what you're worried about. I understand what you want. And that may be exactly what we need to do. But let me understand what you've got and why you want this to happen. And what are your worries or your hopes for this happening? And let me make sure that this is the best option. You may have another option and maybe you didn't know it. I have had more than one person come in and say, this is what I want to happen. And they were just stunned when I looked at them and said, tell me why. Tell me why. Because the why matters as much as the what.
Yeah, absolutely. Great truth and information. Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest problems is everyone always waits until it's too late. I definitely think so. And Steph, I was listening to some of the other episodes that you've done with other hosts, and it's really funny because they all had a similar thought that I did, to where you imagine things like true crime and Dateline. And I'm wondering, some of those horror stories are not just stories, and it's not just content. So tell us about some of those scary things that are the reality when people don't plan ahead.
I'm going to tell you some of the simple ones. I mean, we have all kinds of really interesting cases, but I think the simple ones that hurt my heart the most and are the ones that I can't help, where they call me up and they say, we think Dad had a life insurance policy. Okay. I cannot conjure up that policy for you. I can't. I can give you some clues on where to go and ask good questions, but they did not give me a magic crystal ball when I walked out of school. I can't conjure that policy up, so I can't go find it for you. Now, there are some resources, but it takes time and it takes a process to find it. But those hurt my heart every day to tell them, I wish somebody had told you to ask good questions when they were alive. And I think that's the most common discussion that I have with people, and that I've said before, like, it's ask good questions when someone's living, pay attention, be respectful, always be respectful, because someone doesn't have to share everything in their sock drawer with you. But you can ask good questions and say, hey, I just want to know, do you have this set up? And if you do, is it written down? Is there someplace I would go look? No, I don't need to see it right now. I just want to know, do you have it in place? Because if a crisis happens, I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to be in a place where I'm trying to figure all of this out. I have people call me 10 years after somebody's passed going, okay, it's been 10 years. I'm finally back on my feet. I'm trying to get all of this together. Is it too late? I don't know. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but it's much harder to move forward 10 years later when, we're trying to go back and find this information to see, what your options are and what you can do. So ask good questions, and good questions aren't necessarily like, overly intrusive. Just saying, I've heard about this. I have some concerns. I just want to have a talk. Do you have something done? If you don't have something done, would you like me to help you find somebody who can help you? You don't have to tell me what you're doing because it's your stuff, right? It's always your stuff. Would you like my help to do this? Do you have a certain place where you keep this information? Does anybody else in the family know? Who do you think I should contact? These are really good questions, and they're not hard questions to ask. And look, sometimes you're going to have people where they're like, it's none of your business. It's my stuff until I die, and then you can figure it out. And I have had people say that, and I'm like, that is your right. I don't like it, but it's your right, and I have to respect it, right? It's just a conversation, and I think if people look at it like that, now you have families where they can't agree on the size of the turkey for Thanksgiving. I've seen a lot of those too, and that's something you have to navigate, something you have to look at, and do your best with that, because if you can't agree on a Thanksgiving turkey, when somebody dies, death and money change people every single day. And so now, when we talked about chaos earlier, that situational chaos, if we've just lost somebody, we can't agree. And now we've possibly got money in the middle of all of this. We just took a really hard situation. We threw gasoline on it. And so now we've got that burning, and then we have to couple it with what's going on the administrative side. And let me tell you some of the stuff that we're seeing that is just abhorrent to me. So now life insurance companies have agents that when somebody passes away, that agent will call. Gosh, we're so sorry for your loss. We wanted to let you know that we've been notified and that there is a policy, and we just wanted to tell you we're so sorry. And in our grief, we're just so thankful for somebody reaching out, right? And we're appreciative because it feels like they're making that administrative process easier, right? Because they reached out to us. We wanted to know, how's everything going? What happened? Tell me your story. Mm-hmm. And what do? We talk to them. Here's what we don't know is that person is taking notes on the other side. And if you talk about, gosh, man, all of a sudden we had some significant mental health issues, or man, they picked up smoking again, or, oh gosh, we don't know if they were doing any drugs. We don't know if they were drinking when they were driving that car. You're telling someone who you think is listening, who's helping you through this process, that person's taking notes, and that person is using those notes to go back and look at this claim and see, is there any basis on which they can delay or deny that claim? And people are shocked by it. I've seen where people have had life insurance policies in place for 10 years, 15 years, And then they get a questionnaire in the mail about that policy saying, well, and you think you have to fill it out. Somebody's passed away. So the beneficiaries or family members are like, well, we have to fill this out. We got it. So we're doing this as part of our claim. What they're doing are having you sign off saying that they have the right to continue going back on your medical records, or that they have the right to, ask you more questions about what it took to get qualified for that policy. It's unbelievable. So they are basically sneaking in options for them to re-review and assess this claim for a possibility of denial. It's abhorrent the way that they're doing it. Now, it's business and it's legal, and I have to respect that, but I definitely don't like it. It is, and people aren't expecting that to happen at all.
Yeah, totally. It's like that's so true. It's like using law enforcement interrogation techniques to get a suspect to confess to their crimes. Exactly.
That is exactly what it is. Exactly.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you made mention of what I think is such an honest mistake with people assuming that there's some general database that you can just plug a person's name and date of birth into to where it's going to pop up and say whether or not they have life insurance. And I really like that in another podcast you had shared, it's very loving to have these type of open conversations with people. And to, for everyone who's listening, you can use this podcast as the excuse to be able to open that conversation. Question, if someone has credit card debt, but also has a lot of assets, is the family then responsible for that debt by selling assets? To clarify even more, if there's an estate plan in place or not, does that change the dynamic?
So that's a great question. And I'm going to give you such a lawyer answer, so don't hate me in the comments. It depends. And it depends on your state laws, not only as to debts, how debts are handled in your particular state, but also whether or not it's a community property state or an equitable division state. So my state's a community property state. So any of that debt that was accrued during the marriage, well, that's a debt of the estate of the person who's passed away. At least 50% of it is, right? So when somebody comes in with a bunch of credit card debt, if I've drafted their will, if another lawyer's drafted their will, we usually have provisions in there that say, hey, look, we have the right to, as we handle this estate, to try to see if we can negotiate or deal with some of these debts. We have to tell the court what you owned and what you owed as of the day that you died. And those credit card debts are a part of it. So, we try to go in as part of the administration to deal with those debts as much as we can. Here's what you need to know, okay, as part of that. Life insurance is not considered a part of the estate. So whoever is the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, you are not required by law to use that money to pay off the debts of the decedent. Now, people get life insurance saying that's what we're going to use it for, and that is a moral obligation. But if a person is named as the beneficiary of that policy, they are not required to use that money to pay off the debts. Okay. Same thing with like 401ks or IRAs or anything like that. The beneficiary receives that. It bypasses the estate process, meaning that they went straight to that person and they are not obligated to use those funds to pay off estate debts unless you have run those funds through your estate, in which case they are now assets of the estate to be used to pay down debts. That is how it is in my state. It's probably like that in every other state, but want to be, clear on that. So yes, you need to pay them off. Sometimes people will say, I'll take on that debt myself and, in order to receive from the estate. It just depends on how much is in the estate and how you wanted it handled.
Got it. I knew it always depends. Oh, I didn't know that. That's great information. Yeah, absolutely. I know we have to wrap this up soon, but I want to know, what is the difference between a living trust and a testamentary trust?
One is created during your lifetime, so it is alive while you are alive. So we call it, it's like a coffee cup. And in fact, I have one. So if this cup was my trust, I created it. I said what's in it. And when I pass away, this cup is still here. So everything that's in it is used to transfer out, things the way I want to whom I want. Okay. A testamentary trust is inside your last will and testament. So when you pass away, your will has to be presented to the court. That trust is brought to life by way of your death, not during your life. But it does the same thing. It can say who gets what and how.
And I had remembered you talking about an asset that people can contact you in order to be able to receive. That's basically like all the common questions and answers. How can somebody get a hold of that?
So you are welcome to go to our website, lifeclaim.com, or you can message me through the group here. My email is stephanie.prestridge@lifeclaim.com, which is a mouthful, but I don't know if there's a way to
I'll put it in the show notes.
the site. But anybody can email, go to our website. You can call our numbers on our website, or it's 888-615-3270. You can ask for me. In fact, I answer the phone sometimes, so you might just get me. I'm always pleased to visit and help answer questions and provide, any information that we can about, what your process is. And I'll leave you with this, particularly with the life insurance claims. If you're not sure what's happening, like we have people call right before they pass away and they're like, I have health issues and I know somebody's going to challenge this policy. It's okay to ask for help. If you're not sure what to do because, a policy is not being paid for delay purposes, or you think they're going to deny it, it's always okay to ask for help. Like, we're going to tell you, yes, you have a claim, or here's some steps you need to take. It's okay to get help on these things.
Yeah, that's really good information too, because it's not something that people want to think about or are comfortable talking about. And I think some of my biggest takeaways here is to just have that conversation with the people in your life. You Stephanie, you made mention of calling it your team. And so knowing who that team is now, and then creating them and having them in place, that way if something happens, whether it's just a situation like Clint and I, where it's just the two of us, or if you're a family and you have kids, you talked about even being able to decide that if something happens to you. A story you shared was a dad who still wanted their child to have their Friday night ice cream nights. And so, having the ability to put things like that in place somewhere to where they can still continue to take place. It's so important. And, having a resource like Stephanie available that you can feel comfortable to reach out to, you're not under any kind of obligation, but to just have that simple, open conversation about whether or not, there's something that she can do to help to support. I think it's great to be able to have you in our repertoire. So thank you so much. And thank you for coming on, and to everybody who's tuned in with us this morning. If you guys have any more questions, please make sure that you drop them down below. And hang tight, Stephanie. And I have a few more questions for you. And thank you again for coming on and spending time with us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
The grill is shot. The chairs are held together by optimism. And what happened to the rug? Sounds like your outdoor setup is not ready for patio season. Fix it all with Wayfair. Shop Wayfair for grills, rugs, furniture, and more. With 20 million 5-star reviews, room of choice delivery, and expert setup on qualifying orders, it's never been easier to do more for less. Get 10% off your first eligible purchase. Hurry to wayfair.com or download the app now. Wayfair.